good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are joining us from today. Welcome to Catholic Prison Ministries Coalition's Town Hall, Healing Journeys, the Power of Art and Community for Women. My name is Courtney Malloway, and I am CPMC's Program Manager, and I will be your host for today. Today, we will have the opportunity to hear from two incredible organizations that really focus on uplifting women impacted by incarceration, addiction, and trafficking. And we'll have the opportunity to discover how these organizations use art and use story and use sacred community to open paths to healing, and maybe learn a little bit about the ways that we can walk alongside women in our own ministry that we encounter. But before I introduce our presenters, I'd like to take a moment to begin with a prayer that honors women. Part of this prayer might sound familiar to you. It's been adapted from a Franciscan prayer, and it was written by Deborah Hill. So I invite you to pause for a moment and to center yourself and to bring to mind a woman who has nourished you in your own life or who might be in need of some prayers. Just invite you to bring that woman to the forefront of your mind. And holding all these women, we begin in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And I pray, Lord, make us an instrument of peace. We pray that you bless all women who daily strive to bring peace to their communities, their homes, and their hearts. God, where there is hatred, let us sow love. We pray for all women who face prejudice, inequality, and gender disparities. Help us to see and to face the discrimination against women. God, where there is injury, let us sow pardon. Comfort all women who suffer from the pain of war, violence, and abuse. Help us to become instruments of reconciliation and peace. God, where there is division, let us sow unity. Forgive all who let differences breed hate and discrimination. Let your examples of valuing all creation help us to see that we are equal and worthy of love. God, where there is darkness and despair, let us sow light and hope. Comfort all women who struggle in the darkness and despair of incarceration, violence, poverty, trafficking, abuse, and loneliness. May we stand with them in their suffering and strive to remove the burdens of shame. God, where there is sadness, let us sow new joy. Help us to see the strength and goodness in all people. Transform our hearts to celebrate and love the grace of all. We ask all this, God, in your good and holy name. Amen.
Amen.
And the Holy Spirit. So I'm going to take a moment to introduce the two executive directors of the organizations, and then as they're presenting, they will share and introduce their colleagues who are joining them. If you have any questions today throughout the town hall, please don't hesitate to use the chat feature. And at the end, there will be some opportunity for Q&A, and I'll be happy to share those questions with our presenters. So it's with joy that I introduce Julianne Jarris. She is the Executive Director of Dismas Ministry, a national Catholic outreach that provides faith-based resources to individuals who are incarcerated and the chaplains and volunteers who minister to them. She has more than 21 years of service to the organization, and Julianne brings a steadfast commitment to restorative justice, spiritual care, and transformative outreach. Her servant leadership is rooted in a mission-driven approach that blends both strategic vision and deep compassion. Julianne is also the founder of JJ Creative, and she holds an MBA and brings decades of experience in communications, campaign strategy, and nonprofit development. She's a passionate advocate for faith, dignity, and hope, and she lives and works in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Megan O'Halloran is the executive director of Franciscan Peacemakers, and she grew up in the Milwaukee area as well in a recovering family who valued service and social justice. Her first exposure to Catholic social teaching was through service at a Capuchin meal program, where she learned that if you want peace, work for justice. Megan didn't become Catholic for another 2 decades, but that principle guided her career and volunteer choices. And before joining Franciscan Peacemakers, she worked at an organization serving young people experiencing homelessness. Megan is grateful for the opportunity to use her experience, strength, and hope to provide a pathway to healing for women who've been sexually exploited with the Franciscan Peacemakers. And so we're just so grateful to have Franciscan Peacemakers and Dismas Ministry joining us today to really have this moment to focus on women and to lift them up. So I'll turn it over to you, Julianne.
Wonderful. Thank you, Courtney. I am beyond pleased and honored to be part of this town hall today, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Kelly O'Keefe. Kelly O'Keefe is our volunteer project coordinator for the I Am Beautiful project. So this was a perfect time to have her join us today as we talk about this project and the women that we have involved with it. So I just wanted to start by repeating what Courtney had said about Dismas Ministry. That we are a Catholic publications and mailing ministry, and we are dedicated to providing Catholic faith-based resources and spiritual support to individuals who are incarcerated and to the ministers, chaplains, and volunteers supporting their journey. I want to move to talk about the origins of the I Am Beautiful project and how it started so you can all get an idea of what it is that we do with the I Am Beautiful project. The I Am Beautiful project is really the only particular resource that Dismas Ministry creates that is not Catholic in nature. Now, there are a lot of references to God and faith throughout the resource, but it is not specifically Catholic in nature. And I will explain as I go forward here. But the idea for the I Am Beautiful project really began when staff and volunteers gathered around a table reading letters. And as I mentioned, we're a publications and mailing ministry, and we get about 15 letters a day from prisoners and the chaplains requesting our publications. Now, many of these letters, they revealed really heartbreaking stories, physical, mental, and sexual abuse and trauma. And it was really powerful for all of us. And we thought, we need to do something. So, what we did was we conducted a phone survey. Now, this probably isn't going to surprise many of you in the prison ministry world here, but it was a little shocking for us. We called the chaplains of a list of about 90 prisons that serve women. And we asked, what percentage of the women in your prison have histories of abuse? And we thought, is it 30, 40, 50%? Well, every chaplain responded the same. They said, well, almost all of our women have histories of abuse. I mean, it was like jaw drop, right? We're like, all of them? And the fact is that over 80% of the women who are incarcerated have experienced domestic or sexual trauma and abuse. I want you just to think about that for a moment, just to step back and think. That number is staggering. That percentage is unreal. So, what we also did, one of the things to think about too is incarceration in and of itself really exacerbates trauma and it deepens emotional trauma and mental health. So, in response, Dismas Ministry kind of felt called to do something meaningful. And as you may know, if you are familiar with our resources, we take a restorative justice approach to incarceration, where healing requires not just the victim, not just the offender, but the community as well as creativity and compassionate care. So what we did was we created an opportunity for women to express their stories through writings, so poems, stories, as well as art, to make it a healing outlet, not only for themselves, but also for others, for those that read it. And Kelly can attest that those of us who have painstakingly put together these volumes and have read every letter and every story in detail are moved truly with these stories. So we also conducted a visit to a women's shelter, and this kind of goes back to the origin of the I Am Beautiful project. We spoke with the director, who was a survivor herself, and she shared that she felt so ugly. But she reclaimed her sense of worth, and she said, no, but I am beautiful. So we asked her if we could name the project after that very powerful affirmation, and she graciously agreed. And thus, I Am Beautiful was born. We call I Am Beautiful a survival resource that is created by and for women in prison. So far, we have created 10 volumes of I Am Beautiful, and it began in 2010. So we've been doing it for 15 years. And it's published annually, well, almost annually. We've had staff changes, volunteer changes, and then COVID. So it's been published 10 times over the last 15 years. And we're coordinated with 90 different prison ministries across the United States. And contributors really have experienced joy and pride. These are two samples of letters that we have received. I'm not going to read them in detail, and you will receive these slides after the presentation, so you don't need to read them in detail either. But these contributors have said to us what a difference that this book has made to them, that as they were reading these stories, they felt connected and they felt like finally their story, their trauma, it's being heard. And they felt like people, they were humanized. So they were finding healing and encouragement and connection in the shared stories and poems and art. So this is just a sample of a few of the art pieces that we have here. And I'm going to hand this over to Kelly, who's going to talk a little bit about the art. And in particular, the picture on the far right was created by a woman who has been served by the Franciscan peacemakers.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly. And as Julian mentioned, I'm a volunteer with Dismas. I'm also a volunteer with Franciscan Peacemakers. So I feel like there's some really beautiful, just Holy Spirit is just in this. These people that I'm looking at on the screen who I love and admire and are doing incredible work. It's really an honor. So, full disclosure, and I think it's because we're a bunch of Catholics hanging out here. I didn't know what Dismas was a year and a half ago. I was at an Ignatian volunteer corps meeting. I was at the snack table, and the executive said, Dismas needs help. I'm like, Dismas, is that? I didn't know. I didn't know. And it took probably 2 or 3 volunteer times at Dismas when I finally worked up the courage to say, so what's going on? So I learned who Dismas was and really just immediately fell in love with the ministry. And probably, I don't know, 8, 9 months into my volunteering, it was time to start thinking about I Am Beautiful. And I was watching to see, I spent decades as a high school English teacher. So collecting poetry and assembling a collection of poetry, just second nature, right? I've spent decades reading literature and poetry and just finding such joy in it. So I don't know that the question was fully formed before I said, yeah, of course I'll take that. I'll take that project on. So the process of inviting people from across the country to submit their poetry was just such a labor of love. And didn't hear from every prison. The state of Wisconsin, with the exception of Thea, who is the artist on the right there, not included, right? So we would love it if you hear something today and you're intrigued by it and you want to become part of this conversation. Please put your contact information in the chat or reach out to me or Julianne. We would love, love, love to extend this invitation to anyone and everyone on this call because we think it is just incredible. So after sending out the letters to roughly 90 women's prisons across the United States, the art started coming in. And sometimes it was an essay, sometimes it was a poem, sometimes it was a painting. The painting that you see in the middle is actually the cover of volume 10 with the theme of I Am Beautiful. And the poetry ranged from being victims of sexual assault before being 5 years old, to family violence, to sex trafficking, just to degradation across the board. But what I found with every single poem that I read and every single essay that I encountered was this incredible longing for grace and to truly be seen as someone worthy, someone who could be cherished and maybe forgiven. I mean, not every letter was how can I say this? One of the submissions this year included homicide and included this woman writing to us saying, I had a great life. I was happy. I was healthy. I had everything. If you had looked at my life, you would have wanted my life. And in a moment, it went away. So for me, the time with this collection of art and poetry was this reminder of how if we're going to stand in solidarity with people, we're going to love all of them, right? We're going to love who they are before, during, and after. Um, so I'm just going to take a moment to collect myself because let's go to the next slide while I catch my breath. Here are just two samples, and I don't know, do we want to read these?
Oh, we don't need to read them again. You're going to receive these slides, and this will be made available to you after the presentation. But we do want to mention that these poems are just they are heartbreaking, and while sometimes they can be hard to read, they're real, they're raw, they're human, they're emotional, and they're worthy of and need to be heard and need to be read and need to be shared.
Yeah. When we were putting and I think we can go to the next slide, as we were building this year's volume, and it's kind of a nod to my time as a high school English teacher, as I was reading this poetry, I was immediately interacting with it. Because there were some things that on the surface you could look at it and say, well, how did she arrive at beauty with all of that harm and all of that trauma? How did this artist get to a place? How did she reclaim that grace? How did she reclaim that self in it? And so, English teacher that I am, I started writing these reflection questions. So this year's volume has opportunities, and we see this with people who are using the book now. They're using it for writing prompts. They are using it to interact. I know I've brought some to the Franciscan peacemakers, and when women come in and they're offered a book and they look at the discussion questions and we start talking about it, art is meant to be engaged with. And that doesn't mean we can't just stop and have a moment with a beautiful painting, but the humanity of connection is really transformative. So I want to just say one quick thing about the art exhibit that we had a couple weeks ago, where we had the art and the poetry on display. And we invited the people who came to this art exhibit to write a note to any of the women who are still inside. And I thought this note, I don't have permission to say the person's name, but this person wrote, "Dear artists, I see your beauty in your works. I feel your joy in your brushstrokes. I sense your pain in your journey and your hope. Know you are loved, prayed for, cherished as God's works of art. Thank you for sharing with me today." So this card is going to get sent to the women who shared their poetry and their artwork with us. Really, I think hopefully this was our intention, right? That you're inside, but you have not been forgotten. You have not been abandoned. And we see your genius. We see your talent. We see your humanity. And over 200 people came and noticed it too. So again, next slide, put stuff in the chat if you want to connect with us. If you want, Julianne can speak more to it. But for me, when I think about every collection of poetry that I've read, you can feel that these women took that opportunity to create as a way of staring down that trauma, right? It takes incredible courage to put that, just to say it to yourself in the quiet of your own heart and in the quiet of your own mind, but then to have it published for people across the United States to read. There's a way that I honor these women. I don't always have the words for it, which is not like me because I usually have the words, but there's something very, very sacred about the courage that these women share with us. And we're so proud of this project and already thinking about the next one, already thinking about when can we reach out, what kind of contact can we make. All of the women who participated got a copy of the book. And this is another thing I love about this project. I will not take credit for this. This was already in place, but the women who are published get to send us the name and addresses of two people. And then we send it to that friend, to that family member, and we include this note saying, hey, your family member is a published author. And when they get that letter, and then I immediately get a letter from them saying, thank you so much. I had no idea. My family will be so proud. I have 3 sons. I know it's a lot to ask. Can you send it to my third son? He's in Texas. I'm like, yeah, uh-huh. Yeah, we're sending that out. So I've talked a lot.
Well, we just want the women to know that they matter and that their stories are important. And I'm sure Megan will share a little bit more about how important it is to build them up and to really humanize their dignity and bring them to full circle with us. And I just wanted you to know just one more step for Dismiss Ministry is that I have made the I Am Beautiful books all half price today. So if you want to order your books today, you can go on our website to do that if you want just outside of all of this. But right now, I'd like to turn this over then to Megan, and she can talk to you about the Franciscan Peacemakers.
Thank you, Julianne. And I'm just going to pause 1 second so you can bring the slides up. And I just want to thank you all for this opportunity to connect with so many great people across the country. And thank you also for sharing Kelly with us. I knew Kelly sort of outside of this, and one time I took a shot and I was like, hey, do you ever want to come volunteer with us? And she gladly took us up on it. And she's just been such a treasure for us with our hospitality ministry and just meeting the women and helping build them up, as you said, Julianne. So we are the Franciscan Peacemakers. Our mission is to provide a pathway to healing for women who have been sexually exploited. We offer housing, employment, and a healing network of support to women while advocating for an end to human sex trafficking. And I'm not as cool as Julianne, so I'm just going to say slide, please, because I'm not driving. Okay. So I'll just give you a brief overview of the Peacemakers. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about the housing program that we have. And then Mary and I are going to share some of the insights that we have working with women who are survivors of sex trafficking. And then we'd be happy to answer any questions. Oh, and with me today is Mary Leach Sumlin. Mary Leach Sumlin is the Associate Director of Franciscan Peacemakers and the director of the Clare community, and Mary Leach Sumlin. So I am brand new, although I've been here 1 year. Mary Leach Sumlin has been here since 2017.
My anniversary is coming up on Mother's Day.
Okay, so I have to get her like multiple presents is what I'm hearing. Okay. So neither of us were around though when it was founded. It was founded in 1995. We were founded by two Capuchin priests who started just a street outreach ministry, working with women who were active in addiction, sex work, homelessness. Like we kind of serve at that intersection and providing like basic necessities like lunches, clothing, etc. And we still have that as one of our core programs with our outreach. Along the way, we added 2 additional programs, which I'll get into later on. I already spoke about our mission. Our vision and the vision of our board is a community where every woman is respected and valued. And because we're a Catholic prison ministry discussion, I'll just mention our core value is humble service, grounded in Franciscan spirituality, honoring the dignity of all people. And so like I said, with our programs, we have 2 additional programs. One is the Clare community, and then we have a social enterprise. So we still do street outreach. We have a hospitality center where women can come visit us and still get those basic needs. In the hospitality center, they can get some respite, you know, take a little nap, get coffee, use the restroom, get hygiene kits, etc. And then, like I said, we still go out in a van twice a week, meeting women where they are. And then about 10 years ago, Deacon Steve, who was the former executive director, he was the executive director for like 2 decades, really has been with the organization for 30 years, pretty much, in some capacity. He, along with a few other supporters and staff members, started the Clare Community, which is our housing program, and then the social enterprise, which is making and selling really beautiful self-care products like our soaps and lotions and candles, so that women have a safe place to stay. They can, treat the trauma and then have a way to make money. And at the end of our 2-year program with the Clare community and the social enterprise, the goal basically is that women have saved up they have some savings, sobriety, and skills to transition into their next chapter, wherever the chapter takes them. Slide. So for the purpose of this discussion, we're going to just kind of focus on the Clare community. Like I said, it was started in 2014. The social enterprise and the Clare community are modeled on Thistle Farms, which is an organization in Nashville. They have they call it the Magdalene House. And I think they actually have multiple duplexes throughout the Nashville area. It's not so much created with like a shelter where there's like a staff member who's constantly present. It's survivors living in community together. And once again, because we're a Catholic discussion, let's talk a little bit about why we chose St. Clare. So it's obviously named after St. Clare of Assisi, who is with us today in our little plaque behind me. We're just bringing forward that, her spirit of serving those in need alongside St. Francis, her humility, following the path that was set out for her by God, and kind of resisting the norm, and her, fierce protection of her sisters. And I say sisters in this case. I was talking with Mary earlier as we were just discussing the points on the slides. We're a very small staff. We have 5 people total, and we have several survivors on staff. And when we say, protection of sisters, like one of our staff members was, in addiction with one of our residents, and like they were sisters, really. I mean, and so it's like now we can have that sisterhood in recovery. Every woman that we meet, whether it's out on the street, doing an assessment in prison or in a recovery facility, we recognize that kind of there, but for the grace of God, go I, like it could be us. And so we very much, I think there is a sense of sisterhood amongst us. Slide. Smooth transition. Mary, do you wanna, I'm gonna turn it over to Mary because Mary has been doing this longer than I have, and she's the director of the Clare community, so.
It says like in-depth look at Clare community for entry into the program and what the program entails. In order to enter the program, a woman has to have 90 days of documented clean time, and have experienced some form of sexual exploitation, and along with have the substance use for drugs and or alcohol. Once those things are met, then we go and have an in-person conversation or assessment, one-on-one or probably two-on-one. Sometimes there are 2 staff members or sometimes there's 1 with the woman, just to make sure that the services that we offer would be of value to her healing. The elements of the program include a mental health component. We have a consultant therapist to maintain their sobriety, attend sobriety meetings, obtain a sponsor regarding structure and accountability. There's the shared responsibility of caretaking of the facility. The women are assigned chores, and the chores are looked at just to make sure that everyone is doing their part so that one person doesn't feel like they're doing all the cleaning up and someone else is doing all the messing up, because we have a blend of individuals where everyone is unique. Everyone was raised differently from different styles of housekeeping, some from no style of housekeeping. And so just to make that transition, make everything cohesive, and so that everyone gets along and feels that as they're treated fairly, there's accountability for the chores and the cleanup. There's a curfew everyone needs to adhere and be in the building, or in the house, I should say, at a specified time. As the woman's time with us increases, her curfew becomes later. And then she also eventually gets permissions to be out overnight. Preparation for the future. So we look at a woman's, like, her financial, her legal, her medical, her dental, her mental, all those components. And so we assist them with financial planning, like getting their credit report, trying to address any judgments or anything that they may have that way. We do that in conjunction with a community organization, Riverworks, who they're like a financial coaching facility. We have them address criminal and civil issues, which some of those are found on their credit report, and some of them are like on the data website for the court system. And also goal setting. Like, we start with short-term goals. Where would you like to be in 3 months? Where would you like to be in 6 months? Where would you like to be once you leave Clear Community? How can we help you meet those goals in smaller increments so that it's not so overwhelming and it appear to be something that's too far or too hard to reach? Slide. The elements of the program include community building, and we do that we have community meals. Oftentimes, we try to have we've had the women either take turns being responsible for the meal, or together prepare the meal together, which is a real good community building exercise, because it's really nice to see how, like, everyone cooks together and everyone, like, kind of teases. It's a lot of fun. We celebrate calendar and sober birthdays for the women. We have cake and sometimes cupcakes. We don't have any ice cream.
Okay.
We have a
Duly
birthday coming
noted.
up tomorrow.
We do have a birthday tomorrow. It's a calendar birthday, but with the sober birthdays also, if you are a member of a recovering fellowship, a lot of times there's coins, and
Oh,
so
yeah,
like we
for mine,
always, we'll, like, milestones on those birthdays. We get them and can pass them around and say a little prayer and put our good wishes on it. And I think it's important for somebody with 4 months sobriety to see us celebrating 2 years of sobriety. It's important for somebody with 30 years of sobriety, which we do have somebody on staff with 30 years of sobriety, to see, us celebrating 4 months of sobriety, right? So this is like, it's a very, I don't know, coming from the background like that I am, like, I think it's just a really powerful experience. Okay, I'll turn it back. I will duly noted ice cream. Okay, Mary, back to you.
We also hold house meetings, which are sometimes for to take care of certain business or make certain announcements, and sometimes just to, like, get together. We may need to clear the air about something. That's also the time that we take out just to make sure that everyone is completing their commitment as far as to remaining sober, and also their commitment to saving. The women go on retreats. There are a number of sober retreats, other spiritual retreats that they have gone on, other wellness opportunities to include, but not limited to, like a breathing workshop, yoga. They're doing, some of the women are doing some Reiki session tomorrow. So it's like different things for wellness and self-care. Currently, where we are, there's on-site exercise machines, so they have the ability to use those. We also have candlelighting once a week, and that is where we can come and ground ourselves, and it is kind of a round robin of who brings the prayer or the devotion for the day or the reading. We understand that not everyone is Christian, but if you're not, you can still participate in this type of an activity where you have a reflection, a person that you think of that you want to either pray for or just have positive thoughts brought for that person. So we, we go around and everyone lifts whomever up that they feel is struggling, that they feel needs some special prayer or thoughts. We have reflections, a lot of times there are women who talk about something that happened to them before and how the reading addresses or makes them think of something that happened to them in the past and how they've gotten past it, how they worked through it, um, and the opportunity to share intentions. Is there another slide after?
There sure is, but
Okay.
wait, there's more. Okay, and so there was a request that we just, share some of like our learnings and suggested ministerial approaches to working with women who have experienced sexual exploitation. And the first thing that I think is really important is that everybody understands the concept of sexual exploitation. It can include fraud, force, and coercion. So most of the women, as Julianne actually said in hers as well, like most of the women that we work with are survivors of child sexual assault. So this, like the abuse and exploitation started, some of them when they were before even 10 years old. So it's years of abuse. And sometimes we went to an event and we were presenting about sex trafficking and prostitution, and there was a police officer and he was like, I mean, you drive down the street and like you see a prostitute, and like it's just like the way he was talking was so careless and just like treating the women as if this were their choice, and there wasn't any recognition that along the way the women maybe we're groomed into this. It's, first just take a picture and then do this. And then, the slight, it's almost turning up the temperature. It becomes normal because it's so incremental. And so, the lines between trafficking and prostitution, I think, whether you're working with a woman that is in for, sex work, recognizing that there's somebody who is profiting off of this, and it's never the women that we serve. I'll just put it that way. Somebody is exploiting them. That said, one of the women that we know will say, she really believed it was her choice. She really believed it was something that she was doing. So just being mindful that, you may be walking into this feeling like, oh, this is somebody who is a victim, and they may not see themselves that way. And I just try to hold space that it's really not my position to tell a woman how she needs to feel about it. And just, recognizing that blurred line. Then I put on here, like, I'm a member of a recovering community, and on our coins, we say, to thine own self be true. And like, I was, in high school, and I read Hamlet, and I read that line, and I tell you that I did not really think about it in depth until 20 years later, when I really had to sit down and sit with myself. Like, what does that mean to me? For me, when I use this in this type of work, what I mean is being really honest with myself, knowing my own trauma and what has helped me and how I can bring that experience to, serve somebody else, but also being really like genuine with my motivation, and, recognizing, if there's like a saviorism, like the white saviorism type, that can jump out sometimes, like you got to put that in check. At least for me, speaking only for myself. But also, I spoke with one of the women who is here she came to us from prison. She was in incarceration. And I asked her, like, what would you want somebody to know? And she said, really being like consistent, being accountable with your behavior. So like if you're going to be working with women and you promise you're going to be there like multiple times, like show up when you say you're going to show up.
Mhm.
Because people have made promises to the women, you know, and left them like millions of times in their life. And so that trust will take a lot of time. She flat out said, like, no, if I were in prison, I wouldn't want to talk to you about it. Like, I don't want, you know, so you talk about, it might take like talking about every other thing under the sun before you can actually earn the trust to, you know, steward that story and that trauma. I believe it's important to employ or be around credible messengers. And what I mean by that is like we try to center survivors' like voices and values and vision. The fact that we have a hospitality center was the recommendation of a woman who was like, what I needed when I was on the street was a place where I could go to the bathroom and sit down. So, you know, trying to really listen to the needs of what the women are telling you they need. And I think there's a connection between members on our staff who are survivors that like can more easily form that that connection because they are credible messengers. And I'm gonna let, I know I'm already a minute over of my time on the agenda, but my one other thing is that recovery is not linear. And that is true in any, you know, context, even under, you know, the best circumstances with recovery from substance abuse and other recovery, you know, it may be going along and then something can like change and it feels like you're right back at square one. And so just understanding that like the day, each day is a new day and yesterday may have been great and like today it's like something's like completely wrong and you just really need to take a soft approach to figuring out what it was. Mary, do you have any other?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. Can't think of anything else. Just that this service work is very humbling and it also like it helps you connect you know with other people because no matter what we all have some type of commonality. And so when we can get together and meet at that common ground, that's when we can better assist each other and help each other move forward.
And I will just say one book that I really find helpful is this trauma stewardship book. I don't know if anybody else has read it, but it's just, you know, we end up in our hospitality like service outreach and here we end up taking on a lot of stress and a lot of trauma. And so trying to not let that like numb us or disassociate or any of those things. It can be a work in progress. And so we need to kind of do that self-reflection. And that's what I mean, coming back to that, to thine own self be true, like trying to recognize where it's, how it manifests within ourselves and how we can address it when it does bubble up. And one other thing, Mary, you didn't, so we talked about this before, the firm understanding of the concept of exploitation. The one other thing that she did bring up is sometimes people get these like preconceived notions about what trafficking looks like. And they're like, so I've had people be like, well, isn't the situation at the border terrible? And I'm like, yeah, so it happens in all 72 counties in Wisconsin. So like, I don't know what's happening at the border, to be honest. But I can tell you what's happening right here in our own backyard. And so people have like a lot of preconceived notions about what trafficking looks like. And it's not just like at the border and it's not just, you know, in the central city and it's not just poor women or children. It is, it happens in all socioeconomic demographics. So also just keeping an open mind and, you know, setting aside what you think you know can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, just awareness is important. Being aware and asking questions and getting the right answer.
Okay.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Julianne, Kelly, Megan, Mary, so much for sharing about the incredible work that you all are doing. We did have some questions pop up in the chat that I will share with you all. And please feel free if you have a question to either enter in the chat or you're welcome to come off mute and ask it yourself. But just to start us off, in terms of the I Am Beautiful project, someone was wondering if there's experience in sharing this with parishes. I know, Mary, you mentioned that, art is meant to be engaged with, and you've added some reflection questions, but was there any recommendation going on how to share it kind of at a parish level if small groups ever engage with it? So could you speak a little bit to that?
I was just going to say, I was recently at a vigil at a prison in Wisconsin. Two women at Wisconsin's major women's prison is called Chechita, and two women and died in as a result of preventable pneumonia. But I'll get to that another webinar. I brought probably 15 of the copies of I Am Beautiful because I knew who was going to be there. These were all formerly incarcerated women who are now all doing outreach and are all active in supporting women who are still inside. So I think that's the next step in the ministry of how can women who are returning home access this content. Yes, it's been at Franciscan Peacemakers. I've been in the hospitality room where someone has come in and somebody asked her, "Do you write? Are you a poet?" Yeah, sure enough. And we spend a half an hour with the book. But I think that is, I won't speak for Julianne, but getting it into parishes, getting it into shelters, getting it to places where women are recovering and returning just feels like a natural through line. And I went up to Chichita with 15 books and I came home with none because every woman that I talked to said, I will use this with my prayer group. I will use this with my faith formation. I will use this to do fundraising for support of women who are inside. So I hope, did that answer that question?
I mean, I think it definitely speaks to it and gives some clarification and helpful like tidbits. So I would say yes. But on a flip end, go ahead.
So we're happy to make the resources available. Just please reach out to me. You can reach out to me via email, whatever. We're happy to make the resources available to parishes. So it's not a problem. Doing circle work with this book would be fantastic as well.
Yeah, at the art exhibit, people were just standing at the table and just reading page after page after page. And I was like, take your time. Like, is it okay if I'm here? I'm like, is it okay if you stand here and read this poetry? Yeah, I think so. Absolutely.
Wonderful. And then kind of on the flip side as well, for chaplains and ministers who are at different facilities, how have you found what's been the most successful way to get new facilities to become engaged, and to become for their women to be able to participate?
That's a wonderful question. And it's a question I would like to know as well. We would love to get it out to more prisons. So I want to say to anybody that's watching or anybody that does see this video that they reach out to us at Dismiss Ministry. All of our contact information is on our website. We're happy to reach out to you. We have a list of 90 different prisons that we reach out to, and it usually starts in the beginning of summer where we send a letter along with a poster asking for contributions to this. And the contributions can come from inside, but it can also come from outside. People that have been formerly incarcerated, people that are in reentry, we're happy to take their submissions as well.
And chaplains are busy, right? So, and chaplains move, right? So you might have 5, 6 prisons or 5 different accountabilities. So having people who know people, that's key, right? That's key because we can send in a letter and a beautiful flyer, but if the chaplain doesn't get it, because mailrooms can be challenging depending on the prison, right? So having that one-to-one contact, I think, is going to be that next challenge too of who that's going to take phone calls, right? Like, what's the name of the chaplain? What's the best way to reach them? That's labor intensive, but I think the women are worth it, right? Because I know there are women out there who've never heard of this project and they would participate in it in a second if they were invited.
Absolutely, absolutely. In terms of the art supplies used to create these pieces, if women are presently inside, are we hopeful that the commissary like provides the materials or that they can purchase them, or do groups bring them in? What's your experience with providing art supplies?
state to state, depending on the Department of Correction. I mean, we have probably 50% of our art is charcoal. It's pencil. I know something about Wisconsin's DOC, and it is, I don't want to say it's impossible to get art in, but I'm going to say it. It's almost impossible because the DOC will assume, oh, well, somebody laced a little heroin on that crayon, or and funding is tight. And I assume that everybody who is working inside that DOC is doing the very best that they can. Department of Correction, they're doing the very best that they can. But if a state has to choose between, are we going to deal with the copay, or are we going to get some good artwork and art supplies, we know which one is not going to happen. Now, that varies state to state. If you look at some of the artwork behind, right, those are oil paintings. That's Iowa. Shout out to Iowa. Right? Because that's an artist who's been sending Dismas work for
Many years.
many, many years. And so she's clearly got a beautiful art room. She's clearly got access to really, really great stuff.
Yeah. So it really is state to state, jail to jail, prison to prison.
Completely.
Well, thank you for those clarifying just tidbits and ways that we can become more involved and encourage folks to just engage with the art itself. I'm going to flip over to Franciscan Ministries. There's a question about, housing post-incarceration is such an issue for women. So are you is there a network that you have found of faith-based community housing for folks, or, you know, do you share how to make community grounded in faith? Kind of what are some best practices that you can share around that, or if you've have a collective wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, it is really difficult, and that's part of the reason why we work with them on both the financial planning. It's like in recovery terms, we clear up the wreckage of the past. So we address outstanding issues that may be, barriers to renting post living with us. So it would be lovely. I don't know of a network that we can tap into. Some of the women, are exploring the possibility of becoming Catholic workers. So maybe that is going to be a, potential next step for them. But over the 2 years that they are with us, we try to give them everything that they will need to build a strong foundation. And one of the women currently in our program who came from prison, she will have 2 years with us in July, and she actually has signed a lease and will be potentially moving in even earlier. So but yes, that's a barrier for so many people. I know I think Milwaukee, we just opened up one at St. Francis of Assisi, across the street. There was a community group that I think took over one of the buildings for that purpose of people coming out of incarceration to provide them some stability. So I think from our perspective, ours is the medium ground before they're able to step out on their own, if that makes sense. But if you know of a network, please send them my way. Because I think a lot of we're so small that we can be a little flexible with things. It's designed as 2 years. If you get to 2, there have been a couple of women who were yeah, so we're gonna stay for 3. And if we have the space and the capacity, we'll make it work. So I think 2 years is great. It's so much better. I mean, it grew out of Deacon Steve saw how horrible it was for women who had 30 days of sobriety to be all right, go out and get, start your new life. So he was able to create this 2-year program. But even after 2 years, that's still not enough for a lot of women. So yeah, send that beautiful network my way, please.
Maybe we can all work together to create it, right? That is.
Yeah, that's it. It was here first.
Yes, yeah. I mean, yeah, there's just so many ways that Dismas and Franciscan Peacemakers that you all support women and walk alongside them. And thank you for the ways that you share their stories and stand in solidarity with them and help move to the next chapter. I have not heard that term before about clearing out the wreckage of the past, and I think that is that the women don't have to do that alone, that they do that in community is such a beautiful thing that our faith offers, and that we can all, encourage and do with one another. So thank you both for your powerful stories today. And as we've said, our town hall will be available and on our website. So thank you all again for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at future CPMC events.